This conference will now be recorded.
All right, good afternoon or good morning, everybody. This is the July VLab Improvement Team meeting. As again, a reminder, beginning a few months ago, we decided collectively that we will meet once a month, not every other, or not twice a month. So the second Tuesday of each month is when we'll be meeting moving forward. With that, I'll turn it back to you, John.
Okay, I've taken roll, and I'll continue to monitor folks should some additional people join us. But I think that brings us up to Ken for a VLST update. Are you there, Ken?
I am. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, you're coming in loud and clear.
Okay, great. So welcome. So we within the VLST are active in a few different areas. One is that, as you all know, Steve Smith is the new MDL director, and related to that, we're working on an MDL community within the VLab, VLCS specifically. That's leading to Tao Pham, who's our UI specialist, has been creating some nice new portlets that are for use using JavaScript. That effort piggybacks on work that we've been doing in support of a new National Weather Service heritage site celebrating 150 years within the Weather Service. And so that we've been working with Greg Romano, who's leading that effort, and he's been briefing that, or I guess he briefed that to Louis Uccellini, or Dr. Uccellini, a couple weeks ago. So I'm trying to find out the timetable on when that will roll out. But so those activities are moving forward. Other areas where we've been spending energy are within the cloud, AWS cloud, and specifically in support of an AWIPS related task. So VLab is going to, and MDL with the cloud effort that we've been doing, we're going to be providing an environment in which the National Weather Service field offices will be able to test a conversion from Python 2 to Python 3. And the tools to support that are being developed within VLab and VLCS specifically, where it'll allow users to make those requests, and then we'll be able to associate AWS EC2 instances with particular users and give them the ability to stop and start the instances. So this is a direction that I see future growth, and so that's in support of cloud and MDL and some of the base funding that we get to support VLab. So that's all moving forward. There are also some smaller things being done related to VIT requests. Specifically, Mike Giebler is working on the ability to download multiple documents from the document library all at once. Today, that's not possible, and it will be soon. He's almost done with that work. And there are a couple portlets on the Redmine side that are being, I'm just finishing up testing. One has to do with the checklists and inheritance, and then another, I need to, there's an action item for me to get in touch and have a discussion regarding a separate plugin, and we'll deal with that later in the call. So, so that's at a high level some of the stuff that we're doing. The other is that we are making some additional services. We're prototyping those, one being called SonarQube that does coding standards. And I think I've mentioned this before. It was a request through the AWIPS program, but I think it'll have a wide benefit to all, potentially all VLab projects, where if you've got coding standards, when you check in your code for review, it can be configured so that it would actually scan through the code to make sure it's in compliance with the standards and automatically mark areas where it's not, so that that's better suited for a computer to do that sort of thing as opposed to a human. And so that's a new capability that we've tested. It works. It's called Sonar Cube, and we will be excuse me, making that available to other projects. So that's going forward. We're also setting things up to do builds within Jenkins that will allow projects which historically had unique environments which we couldn't support because of how our infrastructure, and now we'll be able to support many more. So that's coming as well. So some fairly significant changes there that will benefit our users with regard to continuous integration and the code review capabilities. So that is it for my update. Are there any questions?
Ken, on Sonar Cube, that's an interesting service that you are working on. When do you envision that roughly to be available VLab wide?
I would say within the next couple of weeks. I've got it deployed. I just have to request DNS entries and set up certificates. So it and then we need to put together some guidance within our wiki so that we can point people to that. So.
And how do you see us? Would it be like similar to like requesting a new project? It would just be a request that we put in to.
Yeah, so the way it works is that it works in coordination with Jenkins, and so in order to take advantage of it, you'd want to already be using Jenkins. You don't necessarily have to. It would just be, but it does key off of the workflow that we're using, keys off of code review. And so if your project is using code review, it's basically an additional step that's triggered. The modification occurs within a Jenkins job. So basically, when functionality wise, when someone submits a review, code up for review, that triggers a Jenkins job, or it can trigger a Jenkins job for the verification. And that's historically done a very lightweight check. What this can do then is actually trigger a scanning that would take place on Sonar Cube, and then it basically looks at all the new code, looks at the associated coding standards that are tied to the project, and then if there are any issues, it then interjects those into the review. So you see the feedback, and if it finds issues, it'll give it a -1. So
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Okay, great.
Right.
So I guess Ken is also up for our next agenda item, and he had been reviewing a VLST ticket dealing with the search functionality that the VIT had endorsed, and he had some questions and perhaps some additional feedback on that issue. And so I thought I'd just quickly bring it up so that everybody is aware of it. But basically, it was a catch-all issue that we had endorsed to generally improve VLab search. A lot of progress has been made to date, and so now we're looking at steps we need to do to kind of wrap things up. And Ken, in one of his most recent comments, had said that he was looking for some VIT input on searching over all open content. So Ken, why don't I turn it back over to you, and
Sure.
you can lead us through the discussion.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So this was a fairly large, a broad task, and so it had multiple facets to it. So one of the first things was that it just said, the search needs to return more relevant results, and we've made a significant number of changes that I believe have addressed that And as was mentioned in the past, now we're supporting pages. We're also supporting the communities within the search results, and we've also tweaked the results so that if the search string that you're searching over is found like within the title, it gets a heavier weight. So I think that first facet of this particular request has been addressed. The other ones is that the search needs to be configured by most recent, most hits within the current community. And so it is by default within a community, the global search is over that community. So that's the default behavior. So I think we're good there. The relevancy score, the recent activity doesn't necessarily play a role within that. And so if that's still something that we want to do, we can look into that to see how we could potentially increase the relevancy score for assets that have been modified more recently than less. That's, like I said, that's not being done today. So that's something that we need to look into. The one that I wanted to really talk about today is, so the question is, when you're doing a search, would you do a search over any community that you're a member of? And that's the way things work today. So it's going to search over anything that you've expressed an interest within. And one of the things that was requested with this ticket was that basically it should search over all open communities. And I have mixed feelings about that, because if you're going to do that, you're potentially going to get a lot of results for things that, maybe you've made a conscious choice not to search over that's, or not to be a member of that particular community, so you wouldn't want to find the results. So I really want to get your guys' perspective on if you think that's a good thing or not. And if so, it feels to me as though, today when you look at search, do a global search like from the main community, there are two different options there. There's a global search, and then there's a search within this community. And so anyway, I'll leave it at that. I've got a potential option, but I wanted to see what people thought.
Hi, Ken. It's Brian. I like the option to be there if somebody wants to search over all communities or doesn't want to search over all communities. So I think what you're kind of talking about in terms of having that functionality, which you sort of have already, to be able to say, okay, I only want to search here, or I want to search everything. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I know I've heard in terms of feedback and we've seen is somebody comes to the VLab and they're sort of a newbie, or they've just been directed to go there. Mm. Without being able to search over all communities, they're lost. And now again, that kind of ties into what you're saying as well about making sure that relevant search results are returned. But the natural tendency for a lot of people is to say, I'm kind of lost, I don't know where I should go, let me go search for a term. And if it's not going to return them the most relevant broad results, then I'm not sure that search is really what's going to help them. So I like the options, like you're saying, to make it a little flexible, to knowing that there are some people who do know what they're searching for and don't necessarily want to search for everything. So that's a good thing as well. But I think sort of having both is very useful.
Yeah. So maybe a good compromise would be, so you guys should be seeing the VLSC page now. So the default is everything. I think what we probably should have is, so we've got this community and everything. Maybe what we should have is everything really does search over the open communities too. And then we'd have my communities and then this community. So add an additional entry that would be my communities.
I like that. I think that would be good.
Does that make sense to others as well?
It seems logical to me.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see if we can make that so then. So I think one thing that'll happen then is because what happens today is the search, when it's doing it, it checks to see whether someone has permission to view something. And as it is right now in open communities, you don't have permission to actually see it until you join the community. So we're just going to have to add some change to the behavior with regard to search and that. So we can handle that. So, and then, the way it works today is if it returns a search result, or if you try to go to something that you don't have permission to see, and it's an open community, it'll basically give you an opportunity to join the community at that point in time, and then you can see it. So, but you're not going to be able to see content, private content within open communities unless you actually join the community. So public content within open communities is fine, but it's the private content that'll be an issue. So, all right, well, that was what I wanted to talk about.
Great, thanks, Ken. Any last minute input then before we move on to the next agenda item?
John, can you go back to the ticket? Yeah. No, I want to just make a comment that I think the search has been improved, and we know that, so that's a good thing, and that I think was the main point of the ticket. Is there any? I was trying to look there if there's anything else that we might have missed.
Well, there's the help feature, search to help.
I don't know about that one.
Yeah, that one, I feel like there's still room for improvement there. What we've done is we identify using tags that it is part of the user's guide, so that when you do a search, showing the tags within even the basic search, you can basically accomplish that. The thing that what we may need to do is add within like the user, I'll have to go back and look and see if something more is necessary within the user guide itself to basically just search over the user guide. So I don't recall I don't think we have that, but I want to make sure of that before I make that statement. So.
Okay, but I think I just, from again the perspective that I can offer, whatever, it looks like 1, 2, and 3 even working on a lot, and those have been helpful. I know to users to be able to find things that they want to find.
Right. Okay, very good. And we did, occasionally we're getting, I know during the owners meeting, it was raised that, the consolidated reference or error, it wasn't behaving the way it should. That was raised, and we did a quick search, and it really was. It was just a matter of the person didn't add a tag, but they had added tags in the other articles, and so as a result, the one that didn't have the tag associated with wasn't being listed in the top tier, and so you just have to be careful. I think part of the issue we've had with search is it wasn't very good initially, and as a result, we're still dealing with the first impressions there. So, okay, thank you.
All righty. So I guess next up in the agenda is just a short update on our efforts to push forward a proposal to host video content at an enterprise level. And I think Brian will give us just a short update on where we are.
Yeah, where we are is that we approved it through the VIT, And tomorrow we're talking about it with Steve Smith, a few of us, to give him an update and get any further feedback. We've gotten a little email discussion going, and so maybe we've already covered some things or whatever, but we'll see. There's a couple discussion points I think that Ken brought up, and we'll talk about that tomorrow and then see what he thinks in terms of pushing it forward.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Let's see. So we now move to an agenda item where we'll be considering a candidate VIT issue. This is 65616. It was suggested by someone in Western Region, and those folks, let's see, I don't think I need that one yet. Let me find it here. Yeah, I think this is it. They were unable to attend, but asked that I go ahead and try to introduce it to the team, and perhaps we could go ahead and just make a decision on it. So the idea is that we all are familiar with our Google calendars and how important they are perhaps to us as we structure our daily activities and whatnot. And those of us may also be a little familiar with the Redmine calendar. So this is an example from the VLab community, and these are all issues. In principle, I guess they would be issues that I'm entitled to see, and you can see that some of them start on this date and some of them end on that date. So there's some scheduling capability here or information that Ms. Dixon has asked to have integrated into her Google Calendar. And so that's the proposal, that we somehow find a way to capture the information that we see in Redmine. So here's an example of that, and make that available in people's Google Calendar so that they can more easily keep tabs on the issues they're responsible for, and perhaps when they might be due and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so John, this is Ken. So a couple things that come to mind. One is that you'll notice within that the filters up above, those apply to the calendar as well. So any sort of filters, predefined filters that are selected on the left, that's going to filter in terms of what's showing up within that calendar. So you have to click apply once you've selected one.
I was going to find one that seemed to make sense without being too restrictive.
Sure.
Because otherwise they'll all disappear on me. There we go.
Yeah.
So,
so I think it's an interesting idea, and export into like an iCal format or something like that, so that it can then be imported into Google. But the question then would be, as these issues and things are being created, is it then going to automatically update the calendar, or is it like an export at the point in time where you got it here? Then I'm not quite sure how best to handle it. I think if it's static, so that would be doable, based upon having something where you go down to the bottom of this and export it, and then import that in. But to have it be dynamic, I think might be somewhat difficult. So actually very difficult. So
I think even you could make the argument it might not even be possible because of how G Suite's locked down.
Right. Yeah, I suspect that they won't give you access to the APIs.
Right. Like so I have no doubt Redmine might even have some type of integration, but yeah, the problem is on the NOAA G Suite side, everything's locked down. Every API is locked. I think it's a good idea. When I read this one, I like the idea too. I just don't see how it's technically feasible, John.
Okay. Well, that's why we have the ability to reject.
What I mean by that is I'm not saying it shouldn't be endorsed and ranked. I was just thinking ahead to the world of where when you go to the UMS team and want something to get turned on, that answer is always no.
Right.
So I guess, as you alluded to, Todd, maybe the action here is if people agree that it's a good idea, it can be endorsed, and then I can, basically go through the steps of seeing what it would take to make this happen. And then if I get the door slammed in my face, which I probably will, so be it. But at least we will have pursued it, because I agree too. I thought, when the request came in, I thought, yeah, it would be nice to have within my calendar, the issues that I should be starting on, rather than going into Redmine and looking there. So.
All right. Well, given that feedback, then, do we want to attempt to endorse, take a vote, so to speak, and see if folks are amenable to endorsing this particular suggestion?
Yeah, I certainly would be willing to endorse it from the NOS perspective.
Does anyone object to having the VIT endorse this ticket? All right. So why don't the record will show that we're going to go ahead and endorse it. I'll put it together on our ranking spreadsheet, and we'll take it from there. Okay. And I guess that brings us to the open forum, which I will turn over to Todd to lead us in.
Sure. I personally didn't have anything, so I'll just leave it open to the group. Before we get to the, next on the agenda is the open action items. Mm-hmm. But if we had any topic before then, speak now. All right, no worries. On the open issues, John.
All right, great. So we have a number of them open from our last meeting, and I'll just start at the top. I guess Ken and you, Todd, we're going to get together and discuss next steps on issue 58002. Were you all able to spend some time?
We were, and we didn't yet. We will. Ken and I have a couple of these on the list that we will do our best to knock out for August. Promise.
Okay, sounds good. Let's see. I guess Brian and Ken, we're going to get together and quickly talk about whether or not closing one issue would allow us to close another issue, in this case, 32591. Did y'all get together at all?
I think I said I was fine with it. If Ken was fine with it, I think I was fine with it. What can you refer back to the issue again?
So let's see. The one that we wanted to close out.
It was the Watcher one. Yeah. I think I'm fine with closing it. It seems to work to me, but I'll leave it to Ken.
Yeah, okay. I'm fine with closing it as well.
Okay, perfect. Then that particular action item will be closed, and I will take an action to close. Wait a minute. Oh no, did I? Let's see here. Did I get rid of it? I think I can go back. So I need to take an action to close out 32591 through our normal process, which involves, giving folks a chance to comment on it further. But we know that for the most part, we believe the work has been done. All righty, and then of course 4 from our last meeting. I guess Todd and Ken will get together on that one as well. Action item 5 from our last meeting. Let's see. I guess Ken was gonna talk with Rick and perhaps Todd. Oh yeah, maybe Todd again on the Garrett project owners and let's see. You just at the head. Yes. So there was just a bit of explanation necessary. Were we able to close that one out now, or?
I need to follow up with Rick because what I looked at with the projects that Rick's using, they're almost exclusively using plain Git repos, and so in that case, you can't. They can't specifically change the head location, which then controls which branch is shown by default within Redmine. But they can make a request of us within the VLST, and then we can issue a command on the server to change that. So I need to follow up with, I think Rick is a primary one.
Yeah, that's right. And I don't think we need to make that change. I understand now that the better option is for us to convert the project to Jarrett And
Okay.
so we'll continue doing that.
Okay. All right. That sounds good. So can we go ahead?
I think you can. Yeah, go ahead and close it.
Okay. All right, great.
Will do. And then the last open action item is an ongoing effort to track our progress towards basically having the video hosting proposal reviewed and moved up the chain for approval. So that will remain open for a while yet. With that, I think we're now ready.
Yeah. In that regard, this is Rick again.
Yeah.
On the video hosting, do we have any sense of the magnitude of our need compared to other needs across NOAA?
Rick, what do you mean in terms of other needs?
How many terabytes of video are we generating?
I could come up with a Fermi estimate on that at some point. I think Todd had talked about what their purchase was in NOS at some point.
Yeah, each line office is of course different. I mean, in NOS it's hard to even get our arms around because we have 9 different program offices, each with different requirements. But I mean, we'll have some cruises that go out that will capture terabytes alone on a single cruise that they come back to shore with, where the video needs to be stored.
And the same is true in fisheries for both acoustic imagery as well as optical imagery. And now we have, fishery server programs that have cameras in all the fishing boats. And so, I mean, all I'm saying is that there's some other big needs out there separate from VLAB, and I'm wondering if we're really driving the need from a NOAA perspective, or if we're just adding our support for a NOAA solution.
And do we know, I mean, that's a good question. Do we know if there are other groups pushing this? Because it seems like, the restriction on only allowing users to upload content and not have like group, places for uploads and management, that would be a problem across the board, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, to answer the broad question, this is the intent of the proposal is to capture the broader need for video, especially video hosting across NOAA. I can only speak to it from the Weather Service perspective and say that there are many groups in the Weather Service that I know and I can provide examples of that are concerned and have brought to the attention of different groups, IT groups in the Weather Service, that there is a need for hosting of videos, and we're talking about similar to NOS, total terabytes of information, if you add it up and you add it into archives and stuff like that. So there are multiple needs just within the Weather Service for this, and I'm guessing, like you're saying, Rick and Todd, that there are other groups across NOAA, and that's why I think the vision, and we can talk more about this with Steve tomorrow, the vision here is not just to concern ourselves with things that might go onto the VLAB, but things in general related to video hosting across NOAA that the CIO needs to address and say whether or not one option is usable or not, whether it be Google or VLAB or something else like Amazon Web Services.
So Rick and Todd, I take it for these large terabyte data sets, you're not hosting those on Google's YouTube, right?
No, what we did, when I say NOS, I'm more talking about my particular program office. We just literally go to the user base and ask for money, and we host it on Microsoft Azure. So we've moved terabytes and terabytes up there, and of course it's not free. So we just had to come up with a way to capture those costs and charge it back to our particular scientific projects. So we solved the problem. I still think, I think Brian's point is, this is a NOAA-wide problem that hasn't been solved. YouTube I use for only if it's public video that we want to serve on our website, that's of, you know, an announcement type of thing. I mean, a very small subset of our videos ever posted on YouTube. The majority of our scientific video is on Microsoft Azure. I feel bad for those offices that don't have a cloud vehicle to go do that, though. I don't know what they do.
Yes, Rick, I'm not close to the efforts within fisheries, but there are efforts underway. I know that they're looking at Amazon Web Services as among the options. I know we already have some stuff with NCEI, and we recognize, flag it as a significant need that we have.
Yeah, and I think it just, again, just as like a summary to say this is, I think we can pretty clearly say this is a significant need across all NOAA line offices, and that's why we wanted to bring it up. We came through this. I think this is a good example of a cross NOAA group here that we have with the VIT to say, okay, this came up through the VLab. It came as to our attention, but we know this is bigger than VLab, and the NOAA CIO's office, if everybody else is going off and doing their own thing, I would hope that they would realize that this is this begs for a NOAA CIO type solution.
So,
Yeah, I think that's the kind of approach that I see VLab and VIT taking.
so do we know, I know, Todd, you were looking at potentially, because there are some other, issues with no CIO and UMS and the Google application suite. Is there a process by which, they've set up to be able to try to push changes out or propose changes kind of similar to what we have within the VIT itself?
On the G Suite side,
Yeah.
it falls under the committee called, I'm trying not to laugh, but the ECC, which stands for, I think it stands for Enterprise Collaboration Committee. Each line office.
Yeah, you're right there.
Each line office gets a rep. What you hope is that the rep from your line office actually is you hope that you even know who it is to be able to try to get things on the plate to bring up.
Okay.
And then it sits in it churns around for, like a year or 2 or 10 to get turned on. So Ken, if you ask someone from the NOAA CIO office, they tell you that there's a process. It's a terrible one and it's ineffective.
Okay.
And in the case of Weather Service, I think it's someone from your your ACIO shop. It's not even someone representing, your science.
Correct. And it's very, in the Weather Service, as we know, it's not, the CIO's office has sort of been marginalized in the Weather Service,
Right.
so to speak, and it's partially because of the portfolio structure and stuff like that, and that's why it's perfect from the Weather Service side to be able to bring this up through the portfolio structure and get this to the high levels. And that's when I've seen things happen, just from my perspective with the NOAA CIO's office. It's when you get the high level talking about it. And it doesn't happen, like you said, Todd, with the ECC, because that just takes forever and they don't seem to have priorities.
Agreed. It doesn't seem to happen organically like you'd like it to. It seems to take something going to the top. I will say that I do believe that if any office has the money, my understanding is the NOAA OCIO AWS contract is usable by anybody. You have to pay for it. So if you go forward with a requirement to serve video, you're just going to have to do the arithmetic on it. I think that's going to be their technical solution. It's going to have to be cloud. It has to be AWS or Azure. I mean, you can't put video anywhere else anymore, I think.
Yeah. So today, if basically they are covering, so if we upload, are there limits in place with regard to YouTube and through the NOAA process? I mean, if you're uploading content individually, if I go and upload, terabytes and terabytes of data, am I going to get a nasty gram?
I probably. I don't know. I know for Google Drive, there's no limit anymore, and you're not supposed to get a nasty gram. So, yeah. but that's different.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the response, Ken, that I was sort of trying to provide was maybe even though there may not be a limit, that doesn't mean that they won't send us a nasty gram later or something like that, because again, we have no terms of service with them for YouTube besides that we can use it.
All right, and I guess Rick and Brian and Todd, have you gone to Noah and asked what their official policy and pointed out that, okay, this is a problem because we can't do what we need to be able to do, and
I can say from the Weather Service side, the answer is yes, and it was through the ECC and through the UMS leadership, and that fell on very deaf ears.
And so, I mean, what do we know what their official response is?
What I have received as the official response is we have no terms of service for YouTube, and any usage of YouTube is at our own risk. And I can forward that. I have some sort of email thread related to that that I think included David Bedell, who is in the NOAA OCIO office and is in charge of UMS.
Yeah, if you forward that, that'd be helpful.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And Ken, I didn't take it as far as Brian, because when I hit that just initial wall, I just went, all right, I'll solve the problem myself by going to our cloud vendor, and we just procured our cloud solution directly and paid for it. So now the other thing to remember with video storage on the cloud is you do have to pay for egress bandwidth too. So there's other costs associated with it for people to think about.
Yeah, no, it can get, given the potential storage, it could get expensive. So
right.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so back to, hey, John, sorry. John, I think you're muted.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I was just saying that I thought that was a good discussion. Appreciate all the input that folks shared there. And I believe that brings us, unless there's additional open forum open action item review items, I guess we'll move on then to the new action item review. So let's see. The first item that I have is we are going to, as a VIT, endorse issue 65616. I will update the ticket to so indicate that, and then put it on our ranking spreadsheet, and invite team members to go ahead and provide us their input on the ranking. We're going to close issue 32591, and that is in response to action item number 3 from last meeting. Basically, the work of 56115 will result in the closure. I also will close out action item number 5 from last meeting, and that was because basically, I guess Rick is going to migrate appropriate repos to use Garrett, where they'll then have control over the head/default branch. And I believe that's all I have. Did I miss anything?
I don't think so.
Okie dokie. In that case, I'll turn it back over to you, Todd, to close out the meeting.
All right. And with that, I can't believe we're already talking about August. Wow. But we will talk about in about a month, August 13th. See everyone then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Signing off.